Oh, it's a gentle journey, worthy of the wait, like a wild goose flying with its only mate.
It was the Church of Scotland building, but it was quite interesting what happened. You know,
I mean, it must have been the last thing you expected.
You know, but I'll never get dressed up like that again. I knew I was crossing the line. Oh, welcome, Gordon Dundas. How are you doing? Welcome to Whisky Unscripted Season 5, Episode 2.
Two. Yeah, very good, very good. How are you?
I feel like this almost should be like, remember the Naked Gun programs, episode 2.5? This feels an extra half this episode. I think it should be 2.5. I'm doing very well, Gordon.
I just had a lot of feedback from Malcolm Rennie, who was on in the first episode, and everybody was loving Malcolm in terms of his straight down the line chat about Rosebank and his history and all that. Thanks again to Malcolm for debuting our season 5.
Oh, that's fantastic, Gordon. And I thought, you know, I don't have many thoughts about Whisky Unscripted, but I just thought maybe we could start this episode with a dram.
Yes. Okay.
So would you like to go first or second, my love? As they say in all good game shows.
You go first.
Okay. I thought we'd go to the Emerald Isle.
Oh.
I don't. When's the last time you had a Teeling?
All Irish. Are you talking about all Irish whiskey is triple distilled?
Yes.
It's not. It's not.
Right.
Our
all
survey
Irish.
said no. It's not. So you've got what have you got there? A Teeling.
I have got a Teeling, and it is a 13-year-old single grain,
Right.
and it's a red wine finish. Quite, I would say, very interesting.
Single grain. Single grain.
So,
Interesting.
Yeah, got single
it?
grains.
So you've got that sort of lighter, probably firstly matured in refill bourbon or maybe bourbon, and then finished in that big red wine. It's going to be quite strong on the wine, I would guess. A bit tannic dry, a little bit red berry fruitiness. Red
berry is right on the nose there, Gordon. And I love my Turkish Delight. I'm going to talk a little bit about descriptors, but lovely bit of Turkish Delight. But I'm just reading the notes here. 9 years in ex-bourbon barrels and 4 years in ex-Bordeaux red wine casks. So these are the things that, you know, and I thought I'd bring this out because the whiskey renaissance in Ireland. I mean,
absolutely.
Lots of expressions coming out, but just the experimentation that can be done on whiskies now.
Absolutely, and you can even do more in Ireland than you probably can do here. They have single pot still or Irish whiskey as well, which is made predominantly with unmalted barley, which is just barley, really. What you've got there, single grain made in coffee stills, probably quite a high percentage of alcohol, about 94, probably. Not particularly flavoursome because it's made to be blended with, adding that red wine cask could make it a really, really lovely whiskey, I'm sure.
Well, that's it. Gives another dimension, Gordon. And just a little background, you know, my history, had a look at the Teeling family. 1782, they can take their history back to distilling in Ireland. In 2015, they opened up I think it was the first distillery in Dublin in 125 years. So lots of great things happening about the...
2015, this is the madness of the Scotch whiskey, the whiskey industry. 2015 is what, 6-7 years ago?
Yes, right.
And you're drinking a 13-year-old.
Correct.
Ta-da! Obviously not made by that distillery. I have a fair guess which distillery it was made from. That's some stock they will have had from before.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sure it is, Gordon. So that's a lovely whiskey. I just thought quite nicely sort of focus on some of the whiskies for our Whisky Unscripted, and that's a great dram. 50% ABV.
Nice. It's a bit dry, quite dry.
Yeah, dries quite quickly.
Yeah.
But the long finish.
Red wine finishes are, or red wine matured, however you want to look at it, is they're quite polarizing in the world of whiskey. Some people love them, some people don't love them, and hey, that's the way it is. Well, I tell you what I've got we lost one of the good guys in the whiskey industry in the last week, and there's plenty of good guys to be fair, but we lost a gentleman called Jason Craig, who was the brand director for any Highland Park fans out there may may have come across Jason. He was the brand director for Highland Park. 51, I think he was. Unfortunately, passed away through cancer, I think, which is a real shame. And Jason was a good friend of mine. I'd known him for pretty much my whole time in the whiskey industry, so nearly 20 odd years, and worked with him a little bit when I was at Whiskey Magazine on a few things that we did in collaboration with Highland Park and things like that. So genuinely one of the best guys. We always had a time for a word and a chat and a bit of a dram, and really, really good guy. So sadly missed.
Was he always at Highland Park? Did he have?
He's been at Edrington since I can remember. Wow. So that's 20 years plus, I think. He then moved off Highland Park and worked on Cutty Sark for a while and moved back to Highland Park. So I think that's where his heart was, but a real shame he's not with us anymore. And my thoughts go out to his family and to the Edrington family as well, because he really was one of the good guys. But so I'm drinking. I heard about it on Saturday, and I had a little measure of 25-year-old Highland Park from a miniature, which I have, and I'm just going to finish that off because it's such a beautiful whiskey. To Jason, wishing you all the best, and just sad news.
That's very sad. I was glad I rammed to Jason there. Gordon, the other big news, of course, we had Malcolm Rennie on last week, and the other big news is the revival, and more of the revival of Rosebank with the stills arriving.
It continues the revival. I was actually there yesterday, Gordon, and we were just having a discussion on a few things yesterday, and the big holes in the still house are there for the 1, 2, 3 is the magic number stills. Wow. And they're going to get basically dropped in through the roof of Rosebank, so the road's going to be closed. So again, Falkirk residents in that part of town, I'm really sorry.
I tell you what, through the magic of podcasting, why don't we go to two very charming and some might say dashingly attractive gentlemen outside Rosebank with a click of the fingers?
All right, let's do that.
Well, it's a beautiful day here. We're in Falkirk. We're outside Rosebank Distillery, and it is the return of the heartbeat of the distillery. The triple distillation stills, the 3 stills are going to come and are about to be dropped through the roof into the distillery.
Malcolm Rennie, star of episode 1, standing right beside us. Malcolm, could you explain what happened this morning and what we're looking at right now?
Well, at the moment we're looking at the three stills sitting in the back of 2 lorries. What's going to happen now is I think the pot for the spirit stills are going to be the first one that's going to get dropped into the building, and then we'll carry on throughout the rest of the day putting the 3 stills in.
So they had to take the roof off first, is that what I was watching?
They had to take the roof off first, yeah, so they can get them in. So it's a huge landmark day for Rosebank, really another huge step in bringing Rosebank back to life.
That's amazing, Gordon. This is absolutely very exciting, isn't it?
Well, I think if you take into account what happened to the old set of stills here, they were stolen by some people in the 2000s, I think. Then it's great to see the new stills of the same shape as well. So exactly the same shape that was there, coming back in to provide this triple distillation, and then the worm tubs will follow, which was the main feature that made Rosebank so different, was that juxtaposition that we've spoken so much about.
And I have to say, I was expecting to get absolutely slaughtered with the wind and the rain, but it's beautiful just now, isn't it? It's almost meant to be, Malcolm.
Yes, absolute perfect day for it, Gordon, yeah.
And we've got a crowd of onlookers taking photographs, and we've got a gentleman here. What's your name, sir?
Patrick.
Patrick. Now, I believe you've got 1 or 2 Rosebanks in your possession. What do you know about Rosebank? What does it mean to you?
Rosebank, we're a local distillery. I stay just round the corner. It's great to see it coming back to life again.
Did you think you'd see this day?
No. They've had a few attempts in the past, but I think it's going to happen this time.
And of course, I should ask, did you steal the original stills? He's off! Catch that! No, I'm just joking. No, very quickly, Rosebank, what have you got? What's your collection?
I've got about half dozen Flora and Fauna 12-year-olds, amongst others. 21-year-olds, 25, 21s.
And what makes it so special?
Love the whiskey, yeah.
Great. Well, listen, we are just getting the first still off and running, but thank you very much. Enjoy the day, guys. Thank you. Okay, we're about an hour from the last update, so still lovely blue skies. Gordon, what's happening? There's a bit of a delay in the stills going in, and we've got a bigger crowd.
It's a still day, but there's still no development on the stills.
It's all stills. Who have you got?
I'm here with Tom Bruce Gardine. Now, Tom has done some fabulous research and lots of writing on the blog. If you're not a member of the Rosebank Club, obviously join. Tom, it's a big day for this distillery, isn't it?
It's an amazing day. It's wonderful. I mean, it's just, yeah. I mean, just seeing the still sitting there, about to get lifted in, glinting in the sunshine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, amazing.
And not too many upset locals. They all seem actually quite interested. We've got quite a bit of a crowd now, which is fabulous. But Tom, I know you've done quite over the years quite a bit with Rosebank, and you've looked into Rosebank. It really was a special distillery, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was a real special distillery, but it was kind of a hidden gem because it was basically going for blending nearly everything that was being produced until it closed in 1993, and but it was just beginning to get known quite how special it was when it shut.
Yeah.
And it is a miracle that it's survived, that it's been rebuilt, resuscitated, because the odds were, lessening
I think
every
as time
year.
went on, the odds were less.
And there had been attempts to try and do this, but failed.
I mean, there was talk about it being turned into a brewery, there was going to be a micro distillery, there was going to be development, or it was going to get bulldozed. I mean, but the odds were really...
And there was a few false dawns, and I think we've just spoken to some locals here who've gone, we're so glad this is really happening, which is fabulous. So I'm glad you could join us today.
Oh yeah, no, fantastic. I wouldn't miss it.
As the number 38 bus thunders by, and we've got Scott Jackson. Scott Jackson, what is your connection to Rosebanks? I know it's of a liquid variety. Would that be correct?
Yes, indeed. I'm a resident of Falkirk and a keen enthusiast of this particular distillery. So, over the years, I've managed to collect and sample quite a number of the bottles that have been produced here back in the day. So
do you remember when it closed?
I do indeed. Yeah, I had an old uncle who worked here once upon a time back in it would have been in the 70s into the early 80s. And I was always amazed when he used to tell tales of making whiskey on the night shift. I couldn't fathom why anybody would make whiskey on the night shift, given the long maturation
he was a production
time. He was a production guy, yeah. And so that just kind of, piqued my interest. And my father-in-law was in the industry, and I've always been interested in industrial history. And of course, whiskey's a very pleasant drink. So,
And why is Rosebank so special? I think we spoke to Malcolm last week. We kind of roughly have an idea, but for you, why is it so special?
It was certainly known as the Queen of the Lowlands. Generally, amongst whisky enthusiasts like myself, considered to be the sort of premium of the lowland drams. Particular style, nice light in character, got all those lovely sort of fruity, creme brulee, barley sugar, butterscotch type notes. And it's just a very, very, very pleasant, some might say aperitif style whisky, but very, very approachable, easy to drink. And as I say, coming from Falkirk, born here, it just means something particular.
What was
special.
the ABVs of these things? You remember? Paint us a little picture. Some of the whisky, some of the range.
A lot of the standard output was 40 or 43. The sort of classic, certainly of latter years, when Diageo put the classic 6 together, and Rosebank unfortunately wasn't one of those. But when they put their Flora and Fauna range together, the 12-year-old Flora and Fauna was a staple for many years. I think that was from the 80s. That was 43. Latter OBs were Diageo did 2 21-year-olds and a 25-year-old. They were in the early 50s from memory, so early to mid 50s. That 25-year-old particularly is an absolute cracker. It's a beauty. It's just a burst of citrus. Interestingly, I get lime in it, not just sort of orange and lemon, but I get a real burst of lime from it.
Funny that, 'cause we've talked about this before in the podcast, that colour isn't everything.
Yeah.
It's a lighter style.
It's a lighter style.
Full of flavour.
Yeah. And to be fair, even some of the other independent bottlers, Signatory, Gordon and MacPhail, There was a range that Signatory did from around, they were bottled around the 2000 mark, and when you look at them, they're pale as anything. They're almost, you think this is going to have very little flavour. It just looks wrong, and when you taste it, it's just a burst of fruit, sweet fruit, lychees, pears, all that kind of stuff. Fantastic.
It's perfect. People always think it's got to be dark, it's got to be mahogany to have flavour. That's just not the case.
Not the case at all, no, absolutely not.
Right, Scott, give us a quick update. Mr. Dundas is away chatting. Give us a quick update. What's happening?
Looks like they're slinging so all the stills are here. They're literally still in the wrapper, which is fantastic to see. The guys are literally slinging the first load on one of the flatbeds here. Cranes in place. It looks like we're just about to take the strain and get the first load up in the air and across into the distillery. So very, very exciting.
This is almost like a football match. You're reporting live from the pitch side, isn't it? Great, Scott. Thank you so much for that.
No problem.
I hope to share a Rosebank in the future with you.
That would be lovely. Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah, very, very good. And I think like when the stills arrive, it really is the heart of the distillery in terms of you can really, particularly with Rosebank's history in terms of the stills being stolen. So we're really transplanting that heart back into this distillery, which we're really excited about. So
it was great to see so many people there as well, and that's what Rosebank will be, populated by people. You mentioned Jason Craig earlier on today. You said one of the great guys within Whisky, another person. I just thought, Gordon, we teased it last week, and there's the music. Could we attempt to do an A to Z's, not in the whisky production process or the labels and the brands that we did last time, but could we shine a spotlight on some of the people that have in the past or in the present shaped Scotch whisky? Let's go!
Or any whisky.
Yes, you're taking it across the water. Why not, Gordon? Could I start off with a good friend of ours, and I think I've got a lot of Glengoyne behind me. He's one of the great Glengoyne fans and collectors, Mr. Thomas Anderson.
Oh, he is. Yes. Now, he is probably Glengoyne's most avid supporter, and we thank him for that. And now, Thomas, I think, lives in Sweden and got lots and lots of Glengoynes and very active with us and loves to, and I think he's got quite a few casks as well. I also noticed recently that Thomas has been on a very, very strict lifestyle change and has lost a whole load of weight. So congratulations, Thomas. And I'm sure he's going to enjoy his whiskies over the summer period. But Thomas is if you want to know anything about Glengoyne, he probably knows more about it than any of us do. So he's a fabulous man.
Really good, really good. And I have to say, I think Sweden was the third, if not fourth, in the countries that listen to Whisky Unscripted, Gordon.
The Swedes.
Well done.
Fabulous.
So that's Thomas. That's an A. Gordon, give us another A.
Well, I'm going to give you my very good friend Shilton Almeida. Now, Shilton is probably mostly known, in fact, widely known for representing Paul John. And really in the last 5-7 years or so, bringing Paul John, I think the job he's done around Europe predominantly has been fantastic for Paul John. Firstly, they're making very good whiskey. Paul John is a Indian single malt distillery in Goa. They've produced some wonderful whiskies, but Shilton was transferred. He was on a Bosman. I don't know the technical term, but he was on a multi-million-pound transfer and went from Paul John to Milk and Honey in Israel. So he's now, if you want to know about Israeli whiskey and Indian whiskey, Shilton is your man. And he's also moved down the road from me into Clydebank in Scotland, and I haven't caught up with him yet, so I will do. But Shilton, if you've not come across Shilton, fabulous man to know, fabulous man to meet, and really, really knows his whiskey. And what a great ambassador he is for the whole of the industry.
Well, that's great. This is exactly what the feature was meant to do, Gordon. Shine a spotlight on people that are out there making a difference and bigging up whiskies of all types. A couple of them history. I'll just do it briefly. Of course, Prince Albert, the royal warrants given out by Victoria and Albert in the late later parts of the 19th century. So important for Scotch whisky's rise from being a working man's drink to being accepted into the living rooms of the middle and upper classes, Royal Lochnagar and Royal Baracla. So that royal a stamp of approval was so important. So, yep, Albert would be in there when you're talking about whiskey. And I have here, Gordon, hold it, we're recording this in Zoom, so I'm going to hold this to the camera. This is one of the great books of, I would say, whiskey history. And it is it's called The Whisky Barons, and the publishing house, Angel Share Publications, Neil Wilson, publisher. And Neil Wilson is saying he tried to find this Alan Andrews, who I think passed away in the early 1980s, tried to find something about him. But he wrote The Whisky Barons, and it's about those Victorian entrepreneurs, the Tommy Dewars, the James Buchanans, the Peter Mackeys. These Scottish entrepreneurs took the Scotch whisky ball and ran with it, and basically took it around the world and became barons and lords of the empire and friends of the royalty. So it's an amazing book, and he even has a chapter on Francis Berry of Berry Brothers and Rudd, who goes across to the Bahamas to see the Wild West that was the importation into America during Prohibition. He worked out what they were looking for, a lighter whiskey. He went back and created Cutty Sark. You've mentioned it already today. And that was really an amazing, well, it was the first million-selling case whiskey in America in 1961, 62, but it starts in the middle of Prohibition by a very astute man called Francis Berry, and it's all in this book by Alan Andrews. Another A. So it's a fabulous book. Really, one of my favourites. How are we in the A's? Are we wrapping up?
No, I'm going to hark back just a couple more A's that I can think of off the top of my head that I saw a couple of weeks ago at the Glasgow Whisky Festival. I want to say Ian Allen of Glenmorangie. I think we mentioned Ian in the first episode, mentioned twice. Ian he basically seems to do everything at Glenmorangie. He's sort of in charge of the brand home, does a lot of ambassadorial stuff, an all-round generally great guy, and hopefully we'll see him at the Spirit of Speyside Whisky Festival, if not before. Loves a bit of Tamdhu, I hear. And Scott Adamson, friend of the show. Scott from Tomatin, again, really did a lot during lockdown to promote whiskey and his brand, of course. All-round good guy, great ambassador for this industry, and it was great to see him at the Glasgow Whisky Festival. Sorry. There's probably many more A's, and if you've got any A's, let us know.
Let's know.
Because we'll be on B next week. But
there's loads of B's. There's loads of B's, historical and I mean that in the best possible sense, historical and in the present. Loads of B's. So I like that feature, Gordon. I like that.
It was like you researched it. It was really good. Well done.
Thank you very much. I was hoping you might indulge me in a challenge.
I love a challenge.
I love a challenge. This is how we all.
It's not started. The 20-second hand wash challenge, is it? That's 2 years ago now.
I was just, as I do, surf on websites of distilleries.
Really? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's what you call them nowadays. And I always, for some reason, go to the "Where are we?" or "Contact us" or "Come visit us" page. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, there's a nice little challenge. Could Gordon Dundas and anyone listening guess the name of this distillery from the descriptions on their websites? Okay.
Right, okay.
You have got, I would say, 30 seconds to try and identify 3 distilleries each, I should say, starting with number 1 on Whisky Trippin. Gordon, you have got to go to 326 section 2 of the Yuan Shan Road. Then get on freeway number 5, take the exit at Zhao Zhang Wei, then turn right to Da Fu Road, section 3, go down Country Highway number 192, turn left onto Zhongshan Road, section 5, turn right onto Hanwei Road, and turn right on Huanshan Road. You'll arrive in 6 kilometres. What distillery am I talking about?
Camelon.
You are absolutely correct. It's Camelon. Have you been?
I have been, and I lived in Taiwan. So I deduced quite quickly that it was, Mandarin.
Thank you.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't the distillery in China. So by deduction, I thought it's got to be Camelon. And I have been down that route number 19, whatever it was. So I have been down that road.
So it's just further inland from the coast.
No, it's actually on the opposite. So if you actually look at a map of Taiwan, all the main conurbations are down the left-hand side of the island. So Taipei is top left, and there's a high-speed rail that runs all the way from Taipei right down to the bottom of a place called Kaohsiung. Camelon's actually on the right-hand side of the island, about a third of the way down. So it's not particularly accessible. It takes a wee bit of time from Taipei. It's probably about an hour and a half, I think, maybe 1.5 to 2 hours from Taipei. But once you get there, an amazing place to visit, and beautiful. And the late Jim Swan was heavily involved in Camelon, and their distillery manager Ian Chang, who we've done a little bit of work with in Rosebank out in Asia, is now the distillery manager for the new Karazawa distillery in Japan. So yeah, look, they make some great stuff, and they suffer from major losses to the Angels shares because of the temperatures, but some of their whiskies are utterly fabulous. So Gordon,
that's an absolute mine of information. I'm thoroughly enjoying just listening to how you put all these things together. Fantastic. Here, folks, he's on 100%. He says, look, 2 more to go on the great game, Whisky Tripping. Gordon, we're coming back.
So next week, I'm going to do this to you, okay?
Okay, we're in Scotland. So from Aberdeen, the old lights of the Granite City, you take the number 35 from the Union Square bus station. 56 minutes, and you will arrive in Old Meldrum. Then you just need to walk. Say it again?
Glengeary.
1,140 feet on the website from the bus stop to Glengeary, or Glengarioch, as it's read, but pronounced.
It's read, yeah. No, Beam Suntory Distillery. 6 million being invested in this fabulous distillery. I genuinely think it's a gem. Creamy, spicy Highland whiskey. If you've never drunk it, try it. Core range at 48%. Really nice. Really good whiskey. Great people. I've not been up there for about 5 or 6 years, but it's a great little distillery to visit. And one of the oddities of Glengeary is that I think they rent out a house, or one of the houses on the property is a recovery centre for alcoholics. So it's one of those slightly odd situations, but such is life. And
of course.
It's a cracking distillery. I think it's the most easterly distillery in Scotland, I think.
Correct. I was just about to say that, Gordon, and I was about to say that you have not any prior knowledge of this quiz, have you? This is just innate information that you have got stored in that brain of yours. Fantastic. And the final Whisky Tripping. Play this at home, folks. I'm not going to say too much, but we are in the United Kingdom, Gordon. So get yourself to Glasgow Central Station. You will go 2 hours and 22 minutes by train. It's on the hour. You'll arrive in Preston. Then you get on another train for 1 hour and 46 to Birmingham New Street. And then you get on another train for 44 minutes to Cheltenham Spa. There is no other way than jumping a taxi south 10.1 miles. And there you will arrive at quite a well-known distillery close to Cheltenham Spa.
Cotswolds.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. The Cotswold Distillery, Gordon. I think I had a small drama of it a few episodes ago.
Yeah, it's good.
But that's nearly expanding, I believe, the Cotswolds at the moment, doing very good business.
English whiskey's as good as any other whiskey, absolutely. And they've got some really talented people down there making some great stuff. So yeah, Cotswolds is definitely one to try for sure. I tried it and was very impressed. So.
And that concludes our Whisky Tripping.
You're next week. I'm doing it next week.
I don't have that extraordinarily knowledge. I've not been to Taipei, and I couldn't tell you who's the new manager of
Karazawa in Japan.
I don't have that knowledge, so it might not be as entertaining or as informative. But I can inform you, Gordon, that March the 8th this year, International Women's Day. I just thought it'd be quite a nice feature to focus on a little bit the women that have shaped the industry, past or present, in whiskey. And what's your thoughts?
God, where do you want to start? Yeah, there's lots. And there should be more and more women in whiskey, and we're slowly getting there, I think. But there's still, there's still misogyny in places, and there's still things that shouldn't be going on. But we are in a better place than we have been. And you only need to look at Ian MacLeod Distillers, and you only need to look at the amount of ladies we have working for us, the amount of, across the whole, from production all the way through to marketing and everywhere in between. They're an essential part of our business, and it's not, as they should be. It would be great if you didn't wouldn't life be great if we didn't have to sort of highlight these things and it was just the norm? Wouldn't that be nice? You know?
And I speak, Gordon, with 2 daughters, so I am,
I know.
see misogyny or not getting a chance, it boils my blood. So I'm absolutely with you. We shouldn't be talking about this, but obviously we still have to. But it's a nice way of talking about people like, and I did throw it out there, Bessie Williamson, the first female distillery manager in Scotland, who not just kept a hold of Lafroig, but grew it.
Hugely grew it to a level. What was great about Bessie is she took it and ran with it, and then she realized she couldn't run with it anymore, and she got to a point that she couldn't grow it anymore for the funds that she had or the abilities of the constraints from being on Isla, etc. So she sold it on, and she really was a game changer for Lafroig. And funny enough, I was in the swimming pool last night, and I saw John Campbell, who is the ex-distillery manager from Lafroig, and I was chatting to John, and I remember him talking to me about how important she was to the business. So John's now at Lochlee, where Malcolm Rennie came from, and they've just appointed Barry McCaffar as their new distillery manager at Lafroig. So congratulations to him. But certainly Bessie was, I think, the main instigator who set up Lafroig for where it is now. It's an amazing brand, relies heavily on the 10-year-old, but it's a great, great brand. And she's one of the most influential people, of course, in this industry.
If I could just do a couple from history,
if
you would permit me, Gordon. I think, and I don't know if we know as much about us as we should, and I know you do, but Rita Cowan. It's underestimated. Everybody talks about Matasaka Takatsuru, the man who founded Nika, the father of Japanese whiskey. But he took a wife, Rita. Rita took the big decision to go back to Japan with Matasaka Takatsuru, and it was difficult at times, especially during the war years, but she was quite influential in getting the money, I believe, to set up Nika in Hokkaido. That was one of her contacts. She was a private tutor, so she was not just there for to be a part of the furniture. She was part of whiskey story. So Rita Cowan and our own company, Gordon, which is Ian MacLeod Distillers, we purchased it from Edrington, and Edrington were ran by 3 very colourful sisters, the Robertson sisters.
Yes.
And they had a grandfather, Mr. Robertson, who was one of the pioneers of blending, and 3 generations down, they were in charge of his empire that had Cutty Sark, among others, and Ethel, Elspeth, and Agnes. Purchased Glengoyne 1965, and also created the Robertson Trust. And I'm just reading about them earlier on, Gordon. Did you know that in 1947, Samuel Bronfman from Seagram's, multi-millionaire, offered to buy their shareholding in sellout 1947? And I was just looking. The Seagram's had £438 million operating profit in 1947, $53.7 million profits in 1947. And Elspeth, Agnes and Ethel said no to him. No one said no to Bronfman, but they did. And that really put Macallan, Highland Park, Cutty Sark, put Edrington on that path they are to this day, and not being bought over. So the 3 sisters, quite an amazing force of nature, all of them. Few ladies from history.
Well, there's a couple of others. I was up at Cardew recently, which is near Tamdhu. Yes. And I remember hearing of a lady called Helen Cummings.
Correct.
Who is the only woman to ever be a founder of a Scotch whisky distillery. And I know that that's now not the case. If you look at Nick Neen, for example, then we have more ladies bringing in Scotch whisky distilleries, but certainly that was her I wouldn't say claim to fame, but the thing that she did for the industry. And there's a story that says that she once managed to disguise a distillery as a bakery while serving tea to the auditors. And another recounts, and we would absolutely notice this with Glengoyne's history that you've spoken about, recounts a time she walked 20 miles loaded with bladders of whiskey in her skirts, knowing the authorities wouldn't be so undignified as to search her. And that's commitment to your distillery, I think, in getting it to market. And that's a story that you have, or we have recreated actually last October when you walked from Glengoyne into Glasgow with a bladder, but you didn't have a skirt on.
Well, I did offer. Yeah, that's exactly it. You know, the ladies weren't allowed to be frisked, and Helen Cummings a great. And I remember speaking to Ronnie Cox, who's at Berry Brothers and Run, we mentioned earlier on. That's his great grandmother. He's related to Helen Cumming, and yeah.
One more I want to talk about, who is one of the most amazing women I've ever met in this whiskey industry, and it's a lady called Tish Harkis. Now, Tish, you may not be too familiar with her, but she is, if I said to you, one of the biggest brands in the world, and the biggest brand in Australia from a whiskey perspective, what would you say?
Johnny Walker?
No. It's Canadian Club. Now, I've met Tish a few times, and she resides in Windsor in Ontario. Now, Windsor, if you're not familiar where that is, it's basically right opposite Detroit. So if you look at it, you look for Detroit in a map, there's a river, and south of the river is Windsor, and the border of the US and Canada runs down the middle of the river. Now, Tish she's been, unbelievably, basically taking Canadian Club out around the world for many, many years. One of the most amazing women in this industry. I went to Windsor about 6 or 7 years ago, and I spent a full day in the company of Tish, and she told me everything I ever needed to know about Canadian Club. For example, they produce 4 different spirits which they blend together before they then mature it. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
No, you didn't. They use 4 different grains to make 4 different spirits, and they mature all of their whiskey in temperature-controlled warehouses protected by geese. Anyway, that's a side issue. They have a visitor centre there. And what used to happen, because of the proximity to Detroit during Prohibition, you can imagine there was lots of people like Al Capone hanging around, and lots of whiskey coming from Canada over that river into Detroit. And really just sort of shows you, the importance of that, sort of proximity from the Prohibition beaters, as it were. But Tish is the most amazing lady, and she knows her whiskey so well, and I wanted to just highlight her because she is absolutely amazing.
That's fantastic, Gordon. And you know, speaking of lots of money, 10 million. How would you like 10 million pounds?
That'd be lovely. Just transfer it over, please. Thank you very much.
Well, you'd have to come up with a game called Wordle. And this is the game that's sweeping the world. And the creator sold it for 10 million to the New York Times.
10 million? I bet you wish you'd hung on a wee bit longer.
10 million. So, on that note, I thought, could we just, have you got a pen and paper? Could we?
No, I will do, yeah.
Just to finish off this episode, have the world premiere of what I'm calling Whiskle.
Whiskle. Whiskle. Everybody's talking about Whiskle.
A word game, really to do with descriptors. So I'm going to give you a word, and I'm looking for the word previous to it. For example, a 5-letter word before sugar. If you gave me a vowel, say it was O, I would say it's the 3rd letter. So it's brown sugar, basically. So you just got to give me a vowel
Okay.
or a consonant. I'll tell you if you're right. So play this
Okay.
at home. So this,
And then we'll do this again for you next week, okay?
Okay, we've got descriptors I got from the Whiskey magazine.
Can I just say to anybody out there who doesn't play Wordle, you should play it. But there's another one you could play which is really funny called Swordle. It's all about swearing. Sweardle. But anyway,
if you know what Wordle is, look it up. Gordon, this is from, I think it was, I'll say July's edition, and it was Christopher Coates talking about a Swiss single malt called Langatun. And I'm looking for a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 letter word, and the word after it is juice. Something juice.
D.
There is no D.
G.
There is no G.
S.
There's no S. What kind of juice? And it's about descriptors. It's a whiskey, and he's describing it as something juice.
F.
And there's no what are you thinking of? F.
Fruit.
Fruit juice. No.
Oh, this isn't great.
This is what you call slow radio, folks. So have a think. Juice.
E.
Yes. E is the final letter.
P.
Yep. That's the first letter. And I would think it's maybe a sherry, quite heavy, richer type
Prune?
of. Correct. Prune. Boom. Prune juice.
That wasn't
Have you ever
very
used
good.
that as a descriptor?
Not really, but prunes is quite a strong sort of note of European oak and that type of thing. So
Yeah. And I'll just go to the this month's episodes of the Whiskey Unscripted that Stephen Shand doing the 30 whiskies from Whiskey Live. It was a nice little piece. And it's a whiskey I had, believe it or not, on my birthday, which is recently. I had a Bunnahabhain 12, 46.3%. And Stephen Shand in the magazine describes it as something hay. Hay. Something, 5 letters, hay.
Whiskle. Everybody's talking about Whiskle.
And it's Bunnahabhain. So give us a letter.
M.
It's not M. What were you thinking?
Oh, well, that doesn't matter. E.
E is there. It's the second last letter of the 5-letter word.
A.
So E, something.
Wow. This is hard. D.
B is the first and last letter.
D is the B or D?
B.
B is the first and last letter.
D for doormat. D for doormat. And it's hay. So what kind of hay?
Oh, I don't know. You need to tell me.
Dried hay.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Have you ever used that one?
No.
No. And I just wondered, Gordon, it's always a game, play at home and play with friends. That's an idea I'll throw out there. But it was just a quick chat about descriptors. Do you use them? And if you use them, you've got to try and use something that everybody understands.
Not
right?
always. Not always.
Okay.
I mean, not always. Look, I mean, you taste what you taste in a whiskey, and one of the hardest things is to come up with a descriptor. And you know, I'm you know, there's some great people who do it really, really well. I'm not the best, but you know, you taste what you taste, and you have to run with it, and that's it. But
how can you improve when you're get a whiskey wheel, get a flavour wheel, and try
practice? It's like all these things. You know, I don't do enough of it, but I mean, it sounds a bit silly. I drink a bit of whiskey, but I don't sit there and analyze it enough. And to get those descriptors is really, really difficult. And to get a difference between a damson jam or a you know, whatever type of jam is like, really? I think what it is you want to take people, you're not expecting, the worst thing you can do is to pick up a whiskey, nose it and go, I'm not picking up what it says in the tasting note or in the descriptor. That's not what you should be looking to do, but it should give you a general sort of area of travel that this whiskey is going to take you down. And then you can develop your own descriptors. So, I mean, there's a particular example really, really recently when I drank a whiskey, and to me it was just salty, but I didn't see the word salty. I mean, it said maritime was about as close as it said to salty, and for me at that point when I was drinking it after what I had eaten, I was just getting a beautiful salty whiskey. You know, I was trying to, you know, more, it was more sort of that sort of rock salt type sort of, rather than, the cheap sodium sort of salt that you get, from a supermarket. And so there's a whole load of them. But I mean, you're the same. It's, you've been around whiskey for long enough to realize that, what somebody picks up can be remarkably different to what other people pick up. And we did this amazing thing at the behind the scenes at Glengoyne, where we give people whiskies and we go and we give them 25 different types of flavors. So from strawberries to nuts and we say to them, here's your whiskey. As a group, we want you to pick the 5 main aromas that are in this whiskey. And so they pick from this array of flavors and put them on a plate, and we mark them in a really funny way, and it's really good fun. And the differences are really interesting. But you'll know, with, for example, Glengoyne, you get a tasting note, but it's not definitively that's what you're going to taste, is it?
No, I think that's what people want to try and get across, that as well. It's so subjective, and it's what you can get out of it, but it's just trying to get a common sort of language that people can roughly get on board with. And interesting, when I mentioned the prune juice, you went to European oak. So as you say, it's a direction of travel, dark fruit, prunes, and
absolutely.
It's just trying to get that across to people that they're the experts, not us. You're the experts. The glass is in your hands. It's your nose. It's your palate. So, don't be cowed down.
No, absolutely.
Descriptions, and I think that's basically where I come into it. But I just thought, if we can develop Whiskle, Gordon, I'll take 5 million if the New York Times come in. Even 2, 1 each. So I'm hoping it'll sweep the nation.
Yeah, no, I think it needs a bit of work, but I think I'm not. It's not to say that I don't think we could create we could even create a little website called Whiskle, I'm sure.
Whiskle.
What an episode.
Absolutely fabulous. And again, really not particularly thought about, which is
correct.
The whole point of it. So really, really good. My Highland Park 25 was fabulous. And again, to Jason. And let's and the next episode will be a couple of weeks. So everybody stay tuned. We are hearing a lot of people getting in touch, well, 2 or 3, saying that they're still catching up. There's a lot of people still on the episodes behind, and we're conscious of that, so we're just slowing down the rate a little bit.
Lots of ideas for next time. I love that Whisky Trippin, Gordon.
That was good.
Some for me to do it. I'd love to talk about whiskey trips, because we'll have a friend of the show, Petey Pete, trying to plan a trip to Scotland to see some of the whiskey distilleries.
We can touch on that.
So I think we should maybe do a wee more whiskey tripping, as people can now circulate a bit more freely. That's a lovely little seam to mine.
And also, I just want to say, we're living in a very odd world at the moment, and so let's just hope everybody can get to a sense of normality as soon as possible. So to our friends in Ukraine, we are thinking of you.
Yeah, I'll raise a glass to that. Gordon. Cheers, folks.
Bye.
All the best.
On the whiskey trail,